This episode of the Better Every Shift podcast is sponsored by the Fire Store. Learn more about getting the gear you need at prices you can afford by visiting thefirestore.com.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Better Every Shift podcast. My name is Aaron Zamzo. I'm a firefighter EMT from Wisconsin. Also, I'm contrarian writer with Fire Rescue One, and with me, as always, is the editor-in-chief of Fire Rescue One, the captain of the ship, Janelle Fosquet. Janelle, how are we doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Zam?
I'm good. I'm very excited. I have a good friend, and I like to call him a mentor. It's Chief John Oates with us today, who he's a very, very intelligent man. He's very energetic, and we're going to talk a little bit about we're going to talk about talking to the different generations. But first I want to say, how you doing, Chief? Thanks for being here.
I am fantastic. It's a great day to sit and have a conversation with you guys about fire stuff. It's all good. What a great day.
About fire stuff and people stuff. And we've already been talking about a half an hour behind the scenes, and Janelle gave me the evil look to say, hey, let's record this because that's what people want to hear. Right? So, Chief, you're the CEO of International Public Safety Data Institute. You've served as chief of East Hartford, Connecticut Fire Department. You've been a longtime contributor to NFF's Everyone Goes Home program. You serve as a member of the Behavioral Health Advisory Committee with First Responder Center for Excellence. Thank you for doing that. You're also on the NFPA Committee for Motorsports, Active Shooter, and Data. We may have to dive into that a little bit because that's quite a diverse grouping there. You've been intricate with the and pivotal for launching the National Firefighter Registry. And most importantly, you're also a de facto advisor for Janelle and Fire Rescue's One's What Firefighters Want annual survey. And again, a big thank you for that. We kind of started talking about generations and what the differences are and do they even exist? And I asked you, I said, what are you really passionate about? When we talk about that or ask that question, and you had a great response to that.
So I think the conversation started with with the FR1 What Firefighters Want survey, and we're parsing through that data and figuring out, looking at the results, and one of the questions, there started to be this theme of the respondents are like, new kids don't want to do blank, or can't do this, or don't know this, or don't want to work, or can't work hard, all this stuff. And I'm like, can we just stop or retire it's a generational thing for once? And that's when I shared it. I shared it as more of a mild frustration or a little bit of comedy with Janelle, and Janelle's like, yes, absolutely, let's have this conversation. But I think it's part of it. It feels like a cop out because it's too easy to go like, well, it's just because they're a younger generation, they don't know anything, or they don't do anything, or they're not willing to work hard, or they're not going to, whatever the silliness is that we come up with, I think is unfair. I think it lumps a whole bunch of disparate people into a pile just based on perhaps what their birth date was, which, oh, by the way, the generational classifications are really kind of arbitrary. So I think it's an interesting thread to pull, particularly with some of the conversations going on in the fire service today. And I think it's shortchanging the conversation to just kind of shrug our shoulders and go, that's millennials, or that's Gen Z, or whatever the iGen, or whatever the current terminology is way too convenient and way too short-sighted.
And you have experienced that firsthand. That's what why I think you're very passionate about this, because you're like, wait a minute, this isn't new. This has been going on since the fire service, right? Tell us a little bit about your experience with that.
I was fortunate. I grew up a cornfield and 2 houses away from the local volunteer firehouse. My dad was a volunteer for 50 years. I joined the volunteer fire department the day I turned 18. I went away to college. The college had its own fire department. Yay, Franklin Pierce University. Thank you very much. The little small town in New Hampshire had their own fire department. You can see a trend here. I was very distracted during my undergraduate time, and because I was running fire calls all over the place. Graduated and got hired in a career fire department at the age of 22. So I was, the youngest kid, in the group that got hired. And I, made battalion chief, at 30. I made, retired, went and became fire chief at 42. I was always the youngest guy in the room. We were sharing before. The very first overtime that I ever worked in a career department, I'm sitting in the firehouse, and everybody else in the station on duty at that point in time came on the department before I was born. So and here I am, this kid, really enthusiastic with a college degree, surrounded by a bunch of curmudgeonly, older gentlemen that, were of a different generation. And it would have been easy for them to just check off and go like, stupid college kid, what's he going to do? But they didn't. And that was a theme throughout, always being the youngest guy in the room, regardless of what the conversation was up until now. Now I'm like old, I got gray hair. It's still it still interests me because I lived it for such a huge segment of my fire service career.
But they supported you, right? Although, of course they razzed you. They said, what are you going to do, kid? Throw books at the fire, right? That's part of the culture of this. But you mentioned, you said they supported you. Obviously, they're going to give you some guff along the way, but they also went out of their way to make sure that you were part of the system and educated.
And that was, why it's important now to pay that back, because I got exposed to some really, really sharp minds and skilled firefighters and talented people and good leaders, regardless of rank, that you could learn from and go like, all right, here's how to wind yourself. Because there's a big difference going from, a volunteer fire department in a small rural community to, a career department in a community serving a fairly dense population, 65,000 people. It's different. So yeah, to learn all of those nuanced pieces and learn about and understand the community, because I didn't grow up there. I didn't know anything about the community and the department, and I didn't have any family there. I didn't have a hook to get hired. I just got lucky in the system. And yeah, to take advantage of all that and to suck in every bit of knowledge, both the stuff that you tuck in the back of your brain and the other parts that you look at and go like, I'm not the smartest guy around, but I know that right there, I don't want to do that. That's not the shining example of what I want to follow. And tuck that in the back of your mind and go like, in that same position, don't do that because it didn't work, or that person wasn't, kind, polite, helpful, whatever the things are that we want to do. So yeah, I was lucky in that regard to be exposed to people that, contributed along the way and still do, quite frankly.
So do you think there is a generational difference?
I think any differences that we experience, particularly in the firehouse, I think can be more directly attributed to where people are in their life, i.e. life, the subject of lifespan development, than some arbitrary characteristic applied to them based on when they were born. Because as I said, what if you are the mom that's having a child and you went into labor on the last day of one generation and the child was born on the first day of the next generation? What do we classify him or her? That it's arbitrary. You look at the spacing. The spacing is it's 15 years here, it's 16 years here, it's 18 years here, it's 7 years here. It's not grounded in a lot of empirical research. So I think when you look at what we're challenged with in the fire service, and I said I had a bunch of older males at the time that came out of Vietnam, came out of military service, that came out of a factory, and then we're working in the fire service. And then you had this bunch of snot-nosed college kids that came along, and then the generation that came after me, you started seeing high school and college athletes, and then you saw the next generation of people, and all along it's just people are people. And I think the sooner we understand that, the better off we are. And to look at where the three pieces: where are you, where's the organization, where are these humans, and how do we get that all to come together in a way that provides the best service to the community and takes care of the people that are showing up to work, whether it's fire service, volunteer, career combination. I don't care what you look at, providing service to the community every single day.
Well, and you mentioned the lifespan term there, in terms of, instead of being generational, it's based on lifespan. Can you explain that a little bit more about kind of how people become how they are, that then gets lumped into these generational cohort designations?
Sure, I'll use a little wonky description, and I'll use a really fire service description. So the concept of lifespan development is you are, depending on your lens and how you grew up, what you're exposed to through your formative years, through your educational system, things like that help form your lens and how you see the world, and what you are equipped with how you deal with resilience, with how you deal with people, how what your academic background is, what your manipulative skills, what you're able to do with your hands, whether it's hit a golf ball, throw a football, flow a 2.5. All those things are developed throughout your entire growth period. So that growth piece and where you are, we have people joining in the fire service that are 18 years old, 25 years old, 30 years. We have late career people that are in their 40s. Well, a 40-year-old recruit firefighter is in a completely different place as far as what they need as a recruit firefighter student, as a mentor, and as a coach, than a young adult that just graduated from high school and got the winning lotto ticket and is getting into a career fire department or a volunteer fire department at the age of 18. They are in completely different places and have completely different needs. Now, for the stupid fire service example, when I started in the fire department, there was a bunch of people that were around my age that were, that had a similar background. We all came from volunteer fire departments. We were way into the fire service. We were going to school. We were doing these things. After we were working 10s and 14s. So after a day tour, you can maybe go out and grab a beer. There was a softball league. There was all these different things that fit with that group, and that went on for a period of time. And then things happened. People got married. People had children. People had a house. People had responsibilities. People no longer had time to go out for a beer after work because their life was in a different place. And rather than looking at them as like, you're a terrible human, you can't go out with me and have a beer after work. Well, no, they're in a different place. And at some point you will be in that different place too. The same with the people walking in the door. You had people coming in that had, that were from, farming background, or they were used to tools and equipment and manual labor and things like that had skills relative to what the fire service needed at the time, that all the other that we didn't need to teach that. Well, now we have people coming in with a different set of skills that maybe we have to change what and how we teach, because the lifespan development is different than the people walking in the door. And that's not just based on age and date of birth.
And it's the lifespan development theory, the same as sort of like the situational examples. Like, we were reading a lot of articles about this before, and one of the examples was, oh yeah, people say, millennials are lazy and that's why they can't buy a house. Well, maybe they can't buy a house because they were born at a time when, as they approach the age when they might be buying a house, there's like a decade of economic downturn. So it's not about the individual, it's about the situation.
Or because baby boomers are buying all the houses and jacking up the prices.
Those dang baby boomers.
Yeah, baby. Well, think about it in the context of today. Is how hard is it to, real estate prices? I don't care where you are in the country. If you're in a metropolitan area, you're in resume speed, Iowa, real estate prices are stupid. They're excessive. So is it hard for somebody even with a well-paying job and stable finances to buy a house? Absolutely. But that has nothing to do with when they were born. The other interesting thing, and there was some research done too, is younger adults today watched everything that their parents did to have and own a house, that and all the work that goes with that. I got to mow the yard. I got to do maintenance. I got to do upkeep and all that. And they're like, I want to go hang out with my friends. I want to maybe go to a show. I want to sleep. So maybe I want to have an apartment at this point in my life, or a condo where I don't have to sacrifice my off time or whatever, discretionary time that I have to mow in the lawn or plant a garden or all the other things that other people did to own a house. So it's easy to go like, well, they're not buying, that's happening because they're a millennial. Well, it may be happening because a variety of other circumstances are dictating their reaction.
Right. And with that though, too, like, when you buy a house, you have to mow the yard. So you all of a sudden you learn how to do that. You get probably a little bit more introduced to tools, and we were talking before too, that, in some curriculums, they started to integrate in, tools 101, because they're maybe not as commonly used with the younger generation, because of the fact they may not own a house. But, which also then means we need to tell our current generation or older generations how to utilize, Google Maps better, how to utilize technology also, right? Like it goes both ways here.
Absolutely.
But elaborate a little bit about adding curriculums now and how that can really help.
So a number of years ago, I was adjunct instructor for the Connecticut Fire Academy and did a lot of teaching in a recruit program. And it became evident that young adults coming into the program didn't, had never taken anything apart. So they didn't have familiarity with tools. It's like, they're not defective humans. They just have never experienced that. So it's like, okay, we need to teach screwdriver, Phillips, flat blade, different sets of pliers, hammers, striking, forces, leverage, physics, fluid motion, all of those things that perhaps somebody that worked in a factory or a farm or was an electrician or plumber came pre-wired with. So again, not a heavy lift, not like 77 hours of curriculum, but a solid day or so and very early, because then you build upon that in additional curriculum elements. And then it's like, well, you have an academy made up with a large number of students from perhaps an urban environment or lived in an apartment their entire life, never mowed a lawn. It's like, all right, here's how you start and run a lawnmower, leaf blower, snow blower, all the things that we encounter in the fire service. Here's how to run a mop. Here's how to make a bed. Here's how to cook a meal. Here's how to cash a paycheck. It's like all these things that perhaps, you take in sum total that not everybody is going to come pre-wired for. That the need to figure out how we meet people where they are, understand what their life was before they came into the fire service, and then how the fire service can take advantage of their skills before they walked in the door. To your point, maybe they're a tech whiz. Maybe they understand, an area that we have very, very little knowledge of or very, very understanding of. And then how do we add to them the things that, like, here are some core skills that we need you to learn in order to be better. I'll use another easy example. Police, when I was in East Hartford, we shared public safety complex. It was police department headquarters, fire department headquarters, our main fire station and all the admin staff, and then the police station was on the other side of the wall. Police chief is a tremendous human, good friend of mine, and was telling me a story that they had a recruit police officer that went to the academy, graduated, did well, struggled a little bit in the driving piece. Came out, she was going through a field training officer, struggled with the driving piece, did not do well at all. Up until the point where they were getting the employment relationship, she couldn't complete certain job performance requirements relative to driving. And then she's like, well, wait a minute, what's going on here? So they finally asked. She grew up in an urban environment, took mass transit for her entire life, didn't get her driver's license until about 6 months she applied for a police officer job. Well, I'm sorry, you can't go from 6 months of driving experience to meeting the expectations of driving a cruiser in an urban environment for a police department and expect that to go really, really well. So by asking those questions and understanding where she was at, they could figure out a way to get them better. And I think there'll be more and more of that. You get somebody that's on their wheelie board rolling into the firehouse to work their tour, and it's like, hey, here's this 78,000-pound fire truck. Have at it. Have a nice day. And they get and go like, I don't know, what do I do with this?
Yeah. Where are the keys?
Be busy training. Yeah, where's the keys?
Where's
There's
the keys to
button.
that? Well, and the urgency behind this is the fact that research shows that the younger generations are changing careers more than ever, correct?
Yeah, it's when we were doing a study on recruitment and retention for the career fire service in Connecticut, really, really bright people are like, hey, you need to be aware that younger adults today are going to have between 5 and 7 careers in their lifetime, or not 5 to 7 jobs, 5 to 7 careers. And you think about the career fire service, that is an interesting phenomenon for the volunteer fire service, because if they're able to stay in the same community and have 5 to 7 careers, now you have the opportunity to get 5 to 7 more skill sets for them to add value to your volunteer fire department. In the career fire service, if that means they're going to come into the career fire service, go through recruit, get trained, get pretty good, maybe get 1 promotion or 2 promotions, and then wake up one day and go like, I'm out. I'm going to go be a rodeo clown or electrician or, a lawyer or whatever the next cool thing is that I want to do. The fire service is wired to be a lifer deal. And we're not equipped for people we struggled to get people in the door now and up to speed Imagine if that's amplified because we have this churn because it's either not interesting enough. That was one of the things in the FR1, what firefighter want survey is, the opportunities for advancement is how, what's that balance between I know enough to be able to do my job. How do I start to learn the job above me? We're shorthanded. Is that going to shrink my promotional opportunities? And all those things come into bear, and it creates a very interesting dynamic.
Especially if we're not teaching and connecting with them, right?
Yeah.
If we're not teaching them and asking the right questions from the beginning.
But there's also situational factors at play because, again, the older generations maybe like they knew they were going to have a pension, and that's not a guarantee anymore in the fire service, right? In some places. So that could change anyone's perspective on staying or going.
Absolutely.
Because before it was like, golden handcuffs, kind of like, you have to stay.
Yeah, you're going to get a pension, you're going to get healthcare, both things that don't have that level of certainty today. And with that, if they have a 401 or 457, whatever the construct is in that community, and they're like, well, wait a minute, I can hop over the line and make $2 an hour more, or lateral into another position. Then you get people that are chasing the dollar, which further destabilizes what's going on. I think you will see, I'm not sure it'll go completely backwards, but you may see in the near future a time where where municipalities recognize the fact that a pension may be a retention tool, healthcare may be a retention tool to keep people engaged. But Zam, to your point, is meeting people where they are and training them. Think about the senior fire service leaders that you've had walk through your organization or that you've encountered, and what the benefit would be to a new person is, I looked at one of the senior man in my organization retired the day of his 65th birthday because we had a requirement that you couldn't work past 65. So, senior shift commander still is engaged the day he left as he was the day he started, but he was leaving because he turned 65. What immense benefit to the organization it would be if we could harvest all of his institutional knowledge about the fire service, about the fire department, about the community before he walked out the door, and how we retain that institutional knowledge in a way that we can unplug it out of him and plug it into the new employee to shorten their learning curve. And unfortunately, there aren't many good systems to be able to do that, but it would be a complete game changer for the fire service for sure.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that technology, right? What's your thought? If we start embracing technology a little bit more, we can actually tap into that, video, like we had talked about nano lessons, infographics. We're a society where it's an 8 to 10 second attention span. Now, of course, that's labeled to that younger generation. Are you seeing that all the way across the board just because of our environments?
So let's take that in two pieces. One, think about how cool it would be the next department function. You set up a video camera, a chair, and a green screen, blue screen, and just tell people whenever they have, and grab the old people, grab the people that, that have been retired for 20 years, retired for 10 years, that, we're fortunate. Our oldest living retiree lived to be like 103. And it was so cool to be able to sit at the Christmas party and talk to Sam and, understand what the place was like, back then. But to let them sit down and dump their bucket and share what it was like, and then start doing that, on the members' last day or their last week or their last couple of months, like, let's do a vlog about of what your life and your career was. So I think that would be hugely beneficial, and you could edit it and parse it and then put it together into something valuable. Categorize it, both incident and non-incident information. To your other point, I think part of the challenge is it's because of pace. I think everybody's just so doggone busy, is to get folks to slow down and think about like 4 o'clock coffee, afternoon coffee in the firehouse used to be like the unviolatable rule. There were certain things like we're gonna sit down, we're gonna have afternoon coffee. Guys, companies are so busy now. It's like we might be lucky to do that sometimes, but you can't count on it anymore. The get up and sit on the park bench in front of the firehouse when the sun's coming up to have that, those stupid conversations that we have in the firehouse. I think because departments are busy, I think people are busy. I think we keep adding things to the workforce to like, hey, this needs to be done. And again, I don't want to say that in a critical way, because you look at what's, we're fleshing out, community paramedicine, other community engagement, community risk reduction, the things that make the fire service the robust service delivery entity that it is. That, oh, by the way, we still have to be good at fires too, because we're the only ones that are going to go do fire stuff. Everybody else, somebody else might do some of this other things, but we're the only ones who are going to show up and do fire stuff. But to be able to do that in a way, in a pace that doesn't overload people, because you can see it, and I'm sure you experience it on a regular basis, that it's like, can we just have a day? Like, can we just have a day that we're not like you running to death and 47 admin details and 12 drills and all the rest, where we can kind of catch our breath and maybe put a deep clean on the engine and clean up the firehouse and have a decent meal and actually have conversations with each other, I think has tremendous value for a number of reasons.
Yeah, but you're saying, I see it. Yes. I also see a fire service that's tired, and part of it is our own doing, I think, with some of our schedules and sleep. But then, we just keep throwing more and more on our plate. And I think, and maybe in some of that isn't necessarily just, generational gap. It's like we were talking about, this is cultural. This is our societal kind of environment. And that's kind of creating, creating where we are in the fire service. Do you think we're adapting to that well?
I think there's going to be a tremendous opportunity for people like Dr. Sarah Janke and and Denise Smith and Dr. Jen Taylor to do a retrospective study of what the lasting, not from a medical perspective, but from a fire service culture perspective, of the, what the hangover from the pandemic looks like. Because I think when you talk about people being tired, I think that literally felt like dog years. Like it, everybody was, the great unknown added tremendous stress. The supply chain added tremendous stress. Taking care of people, tremendous stress. All the unknowns, tremendous stress. And then the pace was just ridiculous. So I think there will be an opportunity in the future to do a retrospective to look at how long that hangover lasted, because it sure wasn't, like a normal hangover. But I agree with you that the pace is a lot. I mean, it's what the community demands, right? So we need to figure out a way to address it, and some of that is perhaps changing some things that how we look at schedules and how we roster people and how we do time off and all of those things.
What do you think about, the younger generations relying on 911? Now, this is kind of shifting our gear a little bit, but we're still talking about generational things. What's your thought on 911 has all of a sudden become a means of healthcare instead of emergency care? It's right, like, and that obviously adds stress. Do you see that also as you travel around and compile the data throughout the country?
So one of the interesting overlays in N4's analytics is the ability to look at your fire department's data relative to census data, including the American Community Survey, which includes social vulnerability index, and the ability to look at not just what you're doing, how you're doing it, where you're doing it, and identify the populations that you serve. And to your point, when an adult is off their parents' payroll and perhaps they're not working a job that has healthcare, or healthcare is stupid expensive, that 911, or you're in a population that can't afford healthcare, doesn't have access to healthcare. People have their doubts that if they go to the minute clinic, that it's actually going to be a minute before they're seen, or if they go to the emergency room. I was working an event in New Hampshire this weekend, and they're like, hey, the closest hospital is on diversion because they've got like X number of people in the waiting room. The wait time to be seen is 16 hours. So that's not good. That's not good in any system. But the fire service doing a really good job of, if you call, we're going to show up. We asked, and I'll use the Chief Brunacini line. We asked 2 questions: where are you, and what's the problem? And then we'll show up and try to fix it, whatever that is. And that also goes to EMS. Is we're going to show up and we're going to try to fix it. Now, depending on where you are and what that looks like, but there is a huge segment of the population that is their only access to healthcare, and will be their only access to healthcare for a very long period of time. So needs to be mindful as we plan our systems and our responses accordingly.
The Fire Store, equipping protectors with passion. That's how we operate, and it's how we live. We understand that having the right gear can mean the difference between life and death. Our goal is to get you the gear you need, when you need it, at prices you can afford. Visit us at thefirestore.com for everything but the truck. Now, back to the show.
Yeah, very trying times. And I think this then goes back to the emphasis on leadership. How do we adapt to this? How do we look at the data? And then how do we communicate with our own members and educate our own members and train our members, right? Like, this is, even though we're talking about generations, I think we're talking about just, this is the challenge of the fire service, right?
It is. And think about the number of old school bosses that would like lose their mind when you go like, well, why? How come? Why is it that way? Why is it that? Why do we do it that way? What is this? And why is, the why question? Well, that's a tremendous teaching opportunity, because in oftentimes all I want to know is why. Like, explain to me, make it make sense to me, make it have value for me, because if it's value for me, I'm more likely to do it. I'm more likely to do it at a high level rather than this robotic, somebody told me I have to do X, Y, and Z. So I'm going to put my head down. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do nothing more. And when I'm done, I'm done. As opposed to understanding why X is first, then Y, then Z, and what the outcome should look like, and why that matters to the person that lives at the corner walk and don't walk. So I think it tests our communication styles. I think it tests our teaching styles. I think if you're doing training programs today the same way you did them in 2010, 2000, 1980, then it's no wonder that your success rate probably isn't that good, because people learn in different ways. People have different learning styles. And I think it's important for us to figure out what those are. To your point, instead of doing a 4-hour training session, all right, we're going to train on hose this afternoon. Is that broken up into a bunch of 15-minute drills? Is that broken up into 20-minute segments? Is that broken up into, some building blocks? And then we're going to do this at the end. That's up to smart people to figure out, but there's probably better ways to do it than some of the ways we've done it in the past, which is, I don't know anybody that's excited about sitting and parsing through 47 billion PowerPoint slides. Well, guess what? Nobody wants that. So let's stop doing it.
Doesn't this really kind of come back to the root of the issue of why the generational names became so popular, is because they became shortcuts for people, and sort of like, okay, well, I've got a new crew that I'm overseeing, and they're all in their 20s, let's say, and so there's these useful shortcuts, and they think, okay, we've got a new crew, they're all about 20 years oldish. That makes it nice because I can put them in this little box. I know how they learn, so I think there's a resistance, maybe even, to doing away with the generational descriptors, right? Because, well, let's face it, some people use it as a crutch in a way. So then are we asking leaders then to really lead by individual? Is that the only other option?
Well, I think it has to be, because we'll use your example. So we've got this box full of 20-year-old, 20-ish young adults. So we can block them into the same generation. But then when we look at those 20-year, those 3 young adults, one of which is a paramedic. So they've got, some advanced A&P training. They understand chemistry. They understand drugs. But, perhaps they're scared of fire heights in the dark. One of them was a college football player, so he can tackle large things and lift heavy things. But, you ask him to thread an IV catheter, not going to work out so much. And then The other one has a technology degree from MIT, and can tell you how to rewire the microwave, but can't tie their own shoes. So now and those again, three wicked, terrible, gross generalizations. But when you look at that, like that's what we're dealing with. So and it's across the thing. And you have a 30-year-old, a 20-year-old, and a 50-year-old. It's like, well, you need to look at each one of those. And I get it. I was a lieutenant for a significant period of time. I was a battalion chief for a while, chief of department for a while. What I am saying is hard work. But guess what? That's what leadership looks like. Is how are you going to get buy-in? How are you going to get people to understand what the organization needs, what we need to do to be successful at that is hard work. And it might take, I don't know, a little bit longer to figure out how they're wired and what they need in order to be successful. But I probably guarantee you, no matter how homogenous your crew looks, they probably have different needs in order to be successful.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to throw you on the spot here. I'm going to put you back in the Chiefs position because you're bad at retirement. We already said that. I'm going to put you back there, and I'm going to ask you, to all of our listeners that are either chiefs or maybe they're battalion chiefs or they're lieutenants or maybe they're just one of the leaders of their crew. Give me what are three things that you would really focus on and integrate when you're talking about connecting and training I shouldn't say the next generation, just connecting and training the fire service in general right now. What would you do and utilize?
So I think the art of conversation becomes really, really important to be able to sit down either in small group or one-on-one leading to a small group to have that dialogue to get people, to first, let's set expectations, because understand what my expectations are for you. I need to hear what your expectations are for me. That's a massive step. That I had an old school captain. I got transferred into his firehouse. He had a yellow line pad of paper that he had anytime anybody got transferred in or detailed in, they had a company meeting and he went over everything on that yellow line pad of paper to set the expectations. It provided a refresher for the incumbent members, and it set the tone for the new member coming in, that everybody understood what the captain's expectations were and how the house worked. I think that's massive, because otherwise we're just trying to figure stuff and mumbling around trying to figure stuff out. So art of conversation, setting expectations. There's a book called Crucial Conversations that I think is incredibly important for any fire officer or any adult really to read, because it helps you with those really difficult, sticky conversations. Yep, right there. Really difficult conversations that are uncomfortable, that are difficult, that are sticky, but yet lead to a tremendous outcome that get us in such a better place. So I think that is a good resource. And I think, be comfortable being uncomfortable. I spent a lot of time asking questions I really didn't want to hear the answer to, because it was either going to be work for me or work for somebody else, or we're going to have to buy something we can't afford. Oh, well, that's the way that, welcome to the fire service. So I think that is the nature of inquisitiveness, is being comfortable asking the why, asking the how come, understanding what we're doing. And then if you don't have the answer, going on the search for that. And that was one of the things that I thought of before is to not, as a boss, to not, regardless of rank, to not take that as like a personal offense that somebody is challenging you. They might be challenging you to be better. They might be challenging you to share your knowledge. They're not challenging your authority. They're not challenging your rank or your position. They're asking the question because they want to be better. They either have an innate curiosity or they've figured out something that they need to know that you've never told them or nobody's ever told them. So how about we take a couple minutes and spend with them to do that?
Do you think the conversation about generations is eventually going to get to a point where, because more and more people are saying generational differences don't exist, like we got to do away with them. Do you think it's actually going to get to a point where it's almost like considered discrimination, biased? We have this article by Captain Davidson. He wrote this back in 2020, and he was saying, beware the crutch of the generational differences conversation, right? And one of the things he said was, imagine a leader in your organization making the following statement: Firefighter Smith is a fill in the blank with, sex, race, sexual orientation, And because of that, they are fill in the blank with something using these terms. And they said, same thing. Imagine because Firefighter Smith was born in fill in the blank with a year, they will be, and then fill in the blank with a characteristic that you would
Right.
normally ascribe to a concussed koala, which let's just say concussed koala is a really great phrase. But like, is it going to become one of these things where it's seen as like a no-no? You can't talk about people in terms of generations.
I just hope we get smarter, that we don't crutch on it, and that it's like it's not a thing anymore, because we've figured out that, that's the neat thing about the fire service is, for the most part, we are a perpetual organization. We were here before, we're going to be here, a generation from now. And the people, excuse me, the people that are there are different people, and that's going to continue to change. Like, nobody, you don't see a lot of people that, stay there till they're, till they're in their 90s or whatever. There's this continued rotation of people in and out. So I look forward to the day where we just figure out that, we can meet people where they are, that people are people, they bring different tools, they bring different experiences, and we're going to leverage the heck out of those to be a better department. And in that process, we're going to teach them some really, really neat things that they didn't come pre-wired with, that may be different than the last group of humans that, did come pre-wired with.
Yeah, and along the way, we're going to make ourselves better,
Yeah.
right? Because
Yeah.
and sometimes that's, wouldn't you agree? That's where we need to start. Maybe leaders need to understand, maybe they don't have the answers, and in some cases, they're getting challenged. So, what would you say to that side of leadership?
I
And what?
if you're not challenged, which, like, I can't imagine being in a fire chief position, not being challenged every single day, or challenging yourself every day. But, the minute you get comfortable, you need to worry about what dumb things happening next. But I think you need to challenge yourself from an educational perspective. Is look at things and go learn things that were not prevalent in your fire service career when you were coming up. That, they didn't have a class on, you know how to ensure diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging were primary factors in the things that you do around the fire service. How to, what technologies exist beyond what you carry in your pocket, what the modern fireground looks like, what advanced fire behavior and the modern fireground looks like, and how we do that. That if you are stuck, I did a couple brief seminars last year that we can't solve 2022 problems with 1982 data. And we can't solve 2023 problems with 1993 ways of doing things. I mean, there are some, there's some really, really core things relative to the fire service that are, and there's only three of them that are unviolatable, and that should never change. The first is, we are there to provide service to the public. If your name is not on the side of the fire truck, that firehouse, the fire department belongs to the community, and we're there to provide service. When people call, our mission, our job, your only job, is to put yourself between the human and the problem and make it better. Whatever that looks like, that's what we do. The second piece is we need to live up to the t-shirt, tattoo, logo wear bravado that says we are our brother and sister's keeper, and actually do that. And then, yes, if that means you're rolling around in the parking lot of a social function, wrestling a guy's car keys out of their hands to keep him from doing something stupid, then yes, that's my expectation that you do that. So we take care of the citizens, we take care of each other. And then the last one's really simple. Fire trucks are red. Other than those three, everything else is up for discussion. So if everything that we do in the modern environment, and the way the fire service changed, leverages those three things, we'll be fine. But, we can't go adrift from those three things, but we can approach those three things with a different set of humans and have the same positive outcome for the citizens in the organization.
What's one training you would recommend every fire chief or leader in the fire service to do to get? I know you mentioned like crucial conversations. I think that's obviously that was unrehearsed. I've been reading it. It doesn't have enough pictures for me, but I'm trying. I'm getting there. Well,
Oh
what's
man,
another one? Like, so like, again, of our listeners, they want to take something. What's going to make them a better leader that maybe you wish you would have done when you were active?
man, there's so much, and this is going to be all over the place. So bear with me. Go find the 1940s. It's on the shelf behind me. The 1947 copy that NFPA published of Lloyd Lehman's Fire Tactics book, and read it and understand it, and understand those formative things that are now leveraged in today's modern fire tactics. Find Dr. Frank Brannigan's original building construction for the fire service book, the blue hardcover one, and there was one earlier than that. Read that. I got to spend a lot of time listening to, Frank Brannigan, Alan Brunacini, some really, Jerry Tracy from FDNY. You mentioned Chief Salka, guys that had tremendous credibility in the business. We'll get to it in a minute, but when Tom Brennan was the editor of Fire Engineering, he was the fire before he was the editor. He was the fire chief of Waterbury, and that was just having him next door and being able to listen was really, really good. To seek out those people and listen to them, and then be honest. I think part of it is being honest with yourself with what you don't know. I mean, I was a kid from the country, so there was a lot of stuff that I had to learn about working in the urban environment, and fire service culture and career departments and things like that. That it's like, all right, I need to challenge myself. I think if you're not taking advantage of the opportunity for the free stuff that FSRI is doing, if you're not taking advantage of the anti-bullying DEI program the IFC has built that they'll do, and they're doing it at FRI, tremendous opportunity. I mean, there's opportunities like that to learn things, and to again, you have to go in there with an open mind to be able to go like, all right, I'm gonna learn some shit today. It might scare me a little bit, and it might debunk something that I've held as close to me as other things, but that's how we grow, right? You're not going to grow if you're not comfortable, if you're not uncomfortable. So I think never say no to a teaching learning opportunity. And then that's the other thing too, is to take those little nuggets and bring them home to your organization and share them where appropriate, when appropriate, and use them to make the people around you better, whether they know it or not, which is kind of interesting.
And Janelle and I both just paused there, because obviously that's the whole premise of us creating this is it's about making yourself better, then
pay it forward.
push that to someone else, pay it forward. Right. And that's how we get better. Now, if I'm paying it forward and you don't believe in that or don't or question it, there's no problem with that. Let's have a conversation about that. Right. And that's what this is all about. And I think that's so very well said, and almost so well said that it's perfect timing to flow into what we call our hot seat questions, where we change it up just a little bit. If you've listened to the program at all, you know that Janelle's mom and my mom are very big fans. For a while, they were only 2. I think we're up to 10 now.
We need merch.
We appreciate.
If you had merch, you get more fans.
I've been telling them that I'm trying to get some merch. We're trying to get, we got to get the boss on here sometime. I mean, other than you, Janelle, but we're working on that. These hot seat questions, right. They're a little bit more quick witted, and dig a little bit more into who you are. And Janelle, of course, is chomping at the bit, because you are one of her advisor, or on her advisory board. So of course she's can't wait to start this one off. So we're going to have Janelle start with this.
Well, I mean, I have to start with the hard hitting questions first. What is your favorite Hall & Oates song?
Oh my goodness. If you knew literally every single hotel I check into, rental car,
I'm sorry. I know. I had to do it.
Or to where's Daryl Hall? And I'm I haven't heard that in at least 5
minutes.
Yeah. It's thank you. Geez, I didn't I don't know. It was
it's okay.
Let's all be honest. There was a bad period of music in the 80s. There was some bad 80s music that really should just go in a box somewhere. And there was a bunch of.
Is it called yacht rock?
Yeah.
Wham.
Or is
Wham.
it like anything with a saxophone solo? Maybe there's like a lot of sax solos, I think, going on.
Come
in
on,
there.
Careless Whisper is a classic.
Hating on Kenny G.
All right, I've got a better one for you.
Okay.
Better one. All right. What's your favorite generation? No, I'm kidding. I'm actually kidding.
Good.
Mine, of course. And that's the funny thing. I
Gen
don't even
X
know what
all the way,
generation I
baby.
belong
Gen
to. I have
X.
no idea. I don't know.
No, I'm just teasing. But thinking about our discussion about generational differences and how we're tossing that out the window, when we're talking just about individuals and people over time, what's the one trait that you've said, you know, whether you're looking to work with somebody, hire them, whatever it is, what is like that thing that you look for and you're like, that's how I know I want to work with you?
So I think authenticity is kind of a big thing, right? The what you see is what you get. That you're coming through the door and here I am. You know, if you like me, if you hate me, whatever, like here I am. This is who you're getting. So I think authenticity helps. Strength of character to be able to kind of to not to be able to go through the bumpy spots and not bounce back from adversity, but bounce forward. I'm a big fan of persistence. You know, I think, you know, if we give up the minute something gets hard, it usually doesn't lead to a good outcome. So persistence is big. And I'm not, and you guys have probably figured this out. I'm not one for yelling and screaming. So kind of an engaging, but like, kind of calm personality that like we can have dialogue, we can have conversation, we got passionate dialogue and conversation, but once the volume goes up, the sense comes down. So I think it's good to be able to have
I like that.
have a what I fondly term as the grown-up conversation, and that's not generational. That's just that's just a term.
I like that. I like that. When the volume comes up, the sense goes down. Speaking of volume, a great question, and I mentioned this in your intro about your involvement with the technical committee for safety for motorsports venues. Tell me a little bit about what is your favorite venue? How did that come about? And are you a Formula or a NASCAR guy?
So, little history. 1998, a fire marshal in Lake County, Florida, petitioned the NFPA and said, "I've got this little dirt track in my jurisdiction that I have zero enforcement authority, and I really, even if I did, I would have no idea where to go. So I think you should do something about that." And funny story, I've actually been to that racetrack. He petitioned the NFPA. NFPA Standards Council took it up. They asked for public input. They got 37 people to answer back that said not only no, but hell no, which is basically the entire motorsports community. And two individuals, myself and one other, said, yes, you need to do that. Because at the time I was spending a lot of time at racetracks. So I'm from New England, so asphalt modifieds are a big thing, dirt modified sprint cars. Favorite venue, one of my favorite racetracks on the planet is a little place called Cornwall Speedway in Cornwall, Ontario. It's a tiny little dirt track in the middle of nowhere, but it's just such a cool place with cool people. I've been fortunate to go to racetracks in 36 different states or something like that, and nifty cool people, meet a ton of neat people. So I like racing. I like the personalities. I like the technology. I like the people. So I'm not snobby when it comes to one form or another. You mentioned NASCAR. I worked the NASCAR event at Loudon this weekend. So I'll go, but I also worked the dirt track down the street, the night before. So
favorite driver. Who's your favorite driver? You can't say Ricky Bobby because that's fictional.
No. So over time, huge Tony Stewart fan because back in the day when he drove for Glenn Nibel in USAC, because of that I kind of trend towards Kyle Larson today from a NASCAR perspective because the kid drives everything. But I mean, there's just been, you go back, there's just so many cool personalities to root for, and even people you don't necessarily have an affinity for. You can respect the talent and look at them and go like, they're pretty damn good.
Have you watched that Formula One Drive to Survive on Netflix?
I I haven't. There's just it seems like too much drama, and honestly, it's some of it is a time thing. I should probably put it on my iPad and watch it on an airplane someday, but I no.
It was recommended to me. I have not watched it, but I have watched the like sister series about tennis, and it's
Oh,
done really well. So
I've heard it's phenomenal. I just can't commit. Haven't.
yeah, I hear you. I hear you. All right. Well, one of my favorite questions. I love just knowing people's favorite movies, favorite fire service movie, and favorite non-fire service movie.
Oh, so it's funny because some of my favorite movies translate well to the firehouse because they just are. I mean, I don't know why, but like you go back to it and maybe it's the story, maybe it's like I can never get like the Blues Brothers the movie out of my head. It's like one of the best movies ever made. It's just fantastic. So if you're asking questions, here's an uncomfortable truth. I have not seen a movie in a movie theater in over a decade. So
whoa, blowing my mind.
If I've got time off to spend, it's probably not going to be in a movie theater. But oddly, and yeah, so there's some other really kind of cool ones, but that's one. Fire service movie, they're all terrible. They all have entertainment, but as far as an attribution to what it actually looks like, and people ask me, if when it came out, if there was any realism to Backdraft, and I'm like, not really, and I'm like, well, there is one thing, and they're like, what? And I'm like, in the fire where the kid came out and he was like blowing snots out his nose and puked on the side of the building. They're like, yeah, I'm like that's about it.
Yeah.
Other than
back
that,
in the day, now they're
just
they're passing out.
Now you better not, but
Yeah.
then that was about it. So,
well, one final question for you, and this one's deep. How are you personally working and striving every day to get better?
So that's why I love the title of your podcast, because you can't, like, once the sun sets and your head hits the pillow, there's no reverse button, and you can improve on, maybe fix something you screwed up, but that day's done and gone, and like you need to look up and like, all right, tomorrow morning is going to be a great day, and how do I get better? I read, as evidenced by the links that I sent you. I read a lot, and even before I took this job, I read a lot. The bookshelf behind it. I read stuff that is applicable to the fire service, but doesn't say fire service on it. So I think that's a piece of it. To challenge myself to learn something, to learn things that I don't know enough about. Which certainly dealing with data and analytics, I've had the opportunities to do that lately. One of my focuses has been on wildfire, because I'm from the Northeast. We don't, aside from some oddities that we've experienced over time, we don't have a lot of wildfire. Certainly not in Connecticut, so I don't know a lot about it, but I need to. So I've been spending a lot of time looking at research and wildfire, and hanging around people smarter than me when it comes to wildfire, because I don't know anything about it. So I think it's being aware enough of where you are to be able to understand that, and to not let it be a detriment, not get stuck, I think is part of it.
Very well said. And you're right. I mean, that's when you put your head on the pillow, you can't go back.
No.
And again, that's why we're here. And again, thanks, Chief. Thank you so much for being here. Your insight, and just your candid honesty about generations, and that their lack of, really, we have. It's all about communicating with people and trying to meet them wherever they're at, depending upon where they're at in life. Any other advice you have for anybody in the fire service, new, old, in between?
Man, it's you legitimately have a ringside seat to the most amazing show on the planet, and it is literally different every day. I will leave with two nuggets. One that that I think is important as we have those crucial conversations. And I mentioned Tom Brennan before. One of the things that that he said that is stuck in my brain since then is that we're having a conversation about dealing with difficult people and difficult subjects. And he said there is a difference between disagreeing and being disagreeable. And I've tried to take that to heart and share it with other people that there's a difference between 2-3 people disagreeing about how to do something, why to do something, what it is. But there's a massive difference between that and being a disagreeable human that you just want to fight and argue about everything. So that I think is important. The other piece that with what we talked about with the number of distractions and the pace of everything going on is to focus. And again, I don't care, chief of department, chief officer, company officer, member right and facing backwards, pumper driver operator. I don't care who you are, what your role is. Have your brain where your feet are. So if your feet are standing in the firehouse, I want your brain to be in the firehouse. And if you are in a place where today you can't do that, then I'm not sure you need to be in the firehouse. And I say that in recognition of all the things that are like challenges with children, challenges with elderly parents, challenges with paying the bills, challenges with life stressors. All those things can create a extra challenge with having your brain where your feet are. But I think that's a qualifier that if all of us, when we cross the magic threshold into the fire station, that if we can maintain over the course of that time period having our brain where our feet are, you're engaged in the work, you're engaged in the service, you're engaged in the people around you. I think it will lead to a significantly better outcome for not for just for you, but for everybody that's around you.
So well said. Thanks again, Chief John Oates. If you'd like to connect with us, you can see us and email us at bettereveryshift@firerescue1.com. And if you're listening to this, just the podcast version, you can go to YouTube and watch us on video. And if you have questions, want to see some of the links and references that Chief was talking about, you can go to the show notes at firerescue1.com. But most importantly, everybody, make sure you learn something, do something, and share something to make you and those around you better every shift. Thanks for listening.